At the altar, she whispered, "I can't do this. My heart belongs to someone else." So I told the congregation the wedding was off and handed her the mic. Last I heard, he scammed her out of her life savings. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The smell of coffee and expensive cologne hung in the air of the small wood-paneled room. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass window, casting little kaleidoscopes of color on my shoes. My shoes, polished black Oxfords I'd never worn before today. Nervous, Chris asked, slapping me on the shoulder with a hand that felt like a meaty paddle. I smiled, not taking my eyes off my reflection in the full-length mirror. I looked like a stranger, a well-dressed, clean-shaven stranger who was about to marry Sarah. "No," I said, and the truth of it settled in my chest, warm and solid. "Not even a little bit." Chris chuckled, adjusting his own tie. "Liar. Every man is nervous on his wedding day. It's the law. Cold feet. Second thoughts. It's normal." I finally turned to look at my best man. He was grinning. His version of a pep talk. No second thoughts. "Chris, seriously, Sarah, she's it for me." It wasn't just a line. It was a fact as fundamental as gravity. My mind flickered back to the proposal not even a year ago. We were on that craggy, windswept beach in Maine, not another soul for miles. I'd fumbled with the ring box, my hands numb from the cold, and she started crying before I even got the question out. When I finally did, she didn't say yes. She just kissed me, her tears cold on my cheeks, and whispered always against my lips. That was us. Always a fragment of an older memory surfaced from our first year dating. She'd been passed over for a promotion, convinced she wasn't dynamic or impressive enough. I'd spent the whole weekend with her, building her back up piece by piece. "They're idiots," I told her, holding her on the couch. "You're the most capable person I know. You don't need their validation. Your worth isn't tied to their title." She'd clung to me then as if my belief could become her own. I think in some ways it did. I'd watched her find her confidence, her voice. I'd been her safe harbor. And today I was going to make it permanent. I've just never been more sure of anything. I continued turning back to the mirror and straightening my tie for the 10th time. This is the easiest decision I've ever made. "Well, the hard part's almost over," Chris said, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey from a flask into a water glass. "The suit fittings, the cake, tasting the seating chart drama with your Aunt Carol. All of it. After this, it's just you and her. Smooth sailing. Smooth sailing." I echoed, accepting the glass he offered me. I don't even like whiskey, but I took a sip. The burn feeling ceremonial. There was a knock at the door, and the wedding coordinator, a wonderfully efficient woman named Brenda, poked her head in. 5 minutes, Liam. Everyone is seated. She's here. She looks absolutely breathtaking. My heart did a single powerful thump against my ribs. A good thump. The best thump. "See," Chris said, his voice dropping its boisterous edge. "Told you. You're a lucky man." "I know." I whispered more to myself than to him. I finished the whiskey, the warmth spreading through my stomach. I looked at myself one last time in the mirror. The man in the reflection was happy. He was secure. He was loved. He was moments away from the beginning of the rest of his life. I had no idea I was standing at the edge of a cliff. The walk down the aisle was a blur of smiling, tearful faces. I saw my mum dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, and my dad giving me a firm, proud nod. I took my place at the altar, my hands clasped in front of me to stop them from shaking, not from nerves, but from a sheer, overwhelming sense of anticipation. The organist began the familiar, soaring notes of the bridal march, and everyone stood. And there she was, Sarah, a vision in white, her arm linked through her father's. The sunlight from the high windows caught the intricate lace of her veil, making her seem almost ethereal. She was looking down, a small, tense smile on her face. My heart swelled. She's nervous, I thought. My brave girl just a little overwhelmed. She reached the end of the aisle, and her father placed her hand in mine. Her skin was ice cold. I gave her fingers a gentle, reassuring squeeze, but she didn't squeeze back. Her gaze was fixed somewhere on my chest, refusing to meet my eyes. We turned to face the efficient Pastor Miller. His voice was a calm, steady drone full of warmth and solemnity. I heard the words, but they were background noise to the symphony of joy playing in my head. This is it. This is the moment. I kept my eyes on Sarah's profile. Her jaw was tight. A single tear traced a path through her makeup. It was so unlike the happy, exuberant woman I knew, the one who laughed with her whole body and planned our future with relentless optimism. Pastor Miller got to the part. If anyone present can show just cause why this man and this woman may not be lawfully joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. It was a formality, a pause filled with the quiet rustle of fabric and a few soft knowing chuckles from the congregation. The silence stretched for a beat then too. I leaned in close, my voice, a whisper meant only for her. "It's okay," I murmured, my lips almost brushing her veil. "I love you," she flinched. The small physical recoil was like a punch to the gut. My smile faltered. Then she spoke, her voice a low, trembling thread, but laced with a terrifying firmness. "Liam, I can't. I'm so sorry, but I can't do this. The world didn't slow down. It stopped. The air was sucked from my lungs. The colourful light from the windows seemed to dim. I could feel the confusion ripple through the pews behind us. What? The word was a choked gasp. What's wrong? Are you sick? I reached for her hand again, but she pulled it away, clasping hers together as if in prayer. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were full of a pity that felt more cruel than any anger. My heart, she whispered, the microphone, picking up every devastating syllable, echoing her betrayal through the sacred space. It belongs to someone else. It has for a while. It wouldn't be fair to you. I thought I could do this, but I can't. Someone else. The words hung in the air, poison darts finding their mark. For a while, the beach in Maine, the couch where I'd held her our bed. It had all been a lie. A coldness began to spread through my veins. A numbness that started in my core and pushed out toward my extremities, freezing the panic, the agony, the humiliation. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. A strange, supernatural calm descended upon me. It was the quiet dignity of a man who had just seen the entire foundation of his life vaporize, leaving nothing but a void. There was nothing left to feel. I turned my head slowly from her, from the pity and the fear in her eyes, and looked at Pastor Miller. His mouth was slightly agape, his script forgotten. Without a word, I reached out and took the microphone from his limp hand. I turned to face the congregation. I saw Chris half risen from his seat, his face a mask of thunderous confusion. I saw my mother's hand clamped over her mouth. I saw 100 pairs of wide, disbelieving eyes. My voice, when it came, was clear, steady, and utterly devoid of emotion. It wasn't my voice. It was the voice of the man I had to become in that moment. It appears the wedding is off. I paused, letting the stark, brutal sentence hang in the stunned silence. Then I turned and held the microphone out to Sarah. Her eyes were wide with a new kind of terror. The terror of being left alone with the consequences of her actions. Sarah has something she'd like to share with all of you. I placed the cold metal cylinder into her frozen hands. Our fingers didn't touch. I didn't look at her again. I turned and walked, not with haste, not with anger, but with a deliberate measured pace down the aisle. I had just triumphantly walked up. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't look at Chris. I kept my eyes fixed on the large oak doors at the back of the church, my exit. The only sound was the click of my new shoes on the stone floor, and the first choked sob from Sarah as she was left standing at the altar, holding the microphone and the shattered pieces of the life we were supposed to have. I pushed the doors open, stepping from the dim, suffocating church into the blinding, indifferent sunlight, and I just kept walking. The world outside the church was a surreal, overexposed photograph. The sunlight was too bright, the colors of the parked cars too vivid. The only sound was the frantic hammering of my own heart in my ears, a stark contrast to the absolute silence with which I'd left. I didn't run. I walked to my car, my movements robotic, my mind a blank white screen. I got in, closed the door, and the silence became a tangible thing, thick and heavy. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe 20, my hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the ornate stone facade of the church without really seeing it. There were no tears. There was no screaming rage. There was just nothing. A vast, echoing void where my future used to be. My phone tucked into the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket began to vibrate. Once, twice, then it didn't stop. A relentless buzzing hum against my chest, a digital swarm of wasps. I pulled it out. The screen was a cascading waterfall of notifications. Mom, Dad, Chris, Sarah. Unknown number. Chris, Mom, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. I held the power button down until the screen went black. The drive to our apartment, my apartment, the thought corrected with cold surgical precision, was a feat of autopilot. I walked in the silence of the place, greeting me like a physical presence. There were still traces of her everywhere. A half-empty mug of tea from this morning on the coffee table, her favorite blanket draped over the arm of the couch. The faint floral scent of her perfume clinging to the air. I ignored it all. I went to the bedroom, methodically stripped off the tuxedo and left it in a heap on the floor. I changed into a pair of old jeans and a t-shirt. The normality of the fabric against my skin was grounding. Then I got to work. I found a stack of empty cardboard boxes in the storage closet. I started in the bathroom, clearing the shelves of her serums, her moisturizers, the countless products I could never name. I didn't throw them away. I placed each item carefully into a box. A clinical, emotionless archaeologist cataloging the artifacts of a dead civilization. Every bottle, every tube was a memory I was systematically boxing up and sealing away. This was my therapy. Not grieving, not raging, erasing. My landline rang, the shrill sound cutting through the quiet. I glanced at the caller ID. Sarah's mum. I unplugged the phone from the wall. A few hours later, a key turned in the lock. I didn't look up from the bookshelf. I was clearing carefully, placing her novels into another box. I knew it was Chris. He had a key for emergencies. I suppose this qualified. Liam. Jesus, man. Are you okay? I finished sliding a stack of paperback romances into the box before I turned to look at him. He was still in his suit, his tie loosened, his face pale and etched with worry. I'm functioning, I said, my voice even. It was the truth. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the half-packed boxes. What are you doing packing her things? I stated as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. She'll need to send for them, or you can take them to her. I don't care which. Chris ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of pure agitation. Liam, you don't have to do this right now. Sit down. Talk to me. What the hell happened in there? I believe the sequence of events was fairly clear, I said, turning back to the shelf. She didn't want to get married. She's in love with someone else. The ceremony concluded prematurely. Dude, aren't you furious? Don't you want to? I don't know. Key his car something. This isn't normal. I picked up a small frame photo of us from a weekend trip to the mountains. We were both smiling, squinting against the sun. I placed it face down in the box. That would require me to care about his car, I said, my tone flat. Or him or her. Chris stared at me, bewildered. The lack of a visible, messy breakdown was clearly confusing him more than the betrayal itself. People are talking, my phone is blowing up, her family is a mess, your mum is worried sick, she's trying to call you. I turned my phone off. Well, you can't just ghost the entire world, man. I finally stopped what I was doing and looked directly at him. Watch me. I walked past him into the kitchen and started making a pot of coffee. The mundane ritual was an anchor. Chris followed me, leaning against the doorway. Look, I found out who it is, he said, his voice dropping as if sharing a state secret. It's Mark, that guy from her spin class. The one with the obnoxiously white teeth and the convertible. They're already Instagram official. She posted a picture of them at some rooftop bar. It's disgusting. I poured water into the coffee maker, my hands steady. I don't need the updates, Chris. How can you say that? Don't you want to know? The coffee began to drip, filling the room with its rich, bitter aroma. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Knowing doesn't change what happened. Knowing just gives the pain a face and a name, and I'm not interested in giving it that much power. She made her choice. The consequences are hers to manage. My only job now is to manage the fallout in my own life. He was silent for a long moment. I've never seen anything like this. You're like a robot. No, I corrected him softly. I'm a man who just had every emotion he had scraped out of him. There's nothing left to be a robot with. I got out 2 mugs and filled them. I handed one to Chris. He took it. His expression, a mixture of concern and awe. As I sipped my coffee, I looked around the apartment. This place, once our shared dream, now felt like a museum of my own naive. But the gears in my mind were already turning, the white screen of my consciousness beginning to fill with new practical text. The savings account, the one we'd earmarked for the 2-week honeymoon in Italy, a substantial chunk of money now untethered from its purpose. An idea cold and hard and brilliant began to form. A coding boot camp, an intensive 3-month program I'd looked at longingly years ago before Sarah had dictated more practical choices. It was a seed of a new future, planted in the barren soil she had left behind. The pain was there, a deep, dull ache I knew would linger for a long time. But in that moment, it was overshadowed by something more powerful, a resolve as quiet and absolute as my walk down the aisle. She had chosen to blow up our life. I chose to build a new one from the rubble. And the first rule of construction was to clear the site. 6 months. The change in my life was as stark as the difference between the ornate, suffocating church and my new minimalist apartment. The walls were bare except for a single large blueprint of a software architecture I was particularly proud of. The only sounds were the hum of my high-end computer and the occasional click-clack of my mechanical keyboard. The boot camp had been a baptism by fire, and I'd emerged not just certified, but with a portfolio that landed me a fully remote senior developer position at a fintech startup. The salary was almost double what I'd been making. I'd used the rest of the honeymoon fund as a down payment on this place. It was mine. No ghosts, no memories. I was deep in a flow state, optimizing a stubborn block of code when a familiar knock came at the door. It was Chris's knock. 3 quick, solid raps. I sighed, saved my work, and went to let him in. He looked different. The constant worry that had etched his face in the months after the non-wedding was gone, replaced by a kind of grim astonishment. He held a 6-pack of craft beer, a peace offering. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said, his voice a low rumble as he walked in and placed the beers on the kitchen counter. I'm good, I said, leaning against the counter. What's up? He took a breath as if steeling himself to deliver news of an impending asteroid. It's Sarah. I didn't react. I just waited. It's all falling apart completely. You're not going to believe it. He paused for dramatic effect, but when I didn't bite, he ploughed on. Mark the spin class, Romeo. He's gone. Vanished. I remained silent, my expression neutral. He didn't just leave her, Liam. Chris continued, his eyes wide. He cleaned her out. He had access to her savings, the one with the money her grandma left her. He took it all. Every last cent must have been 4050 grand. And that's not all. He maxed out our credit cards, bought himself a new watch, a bunch of designer crap, and then poof, ghosted. His phone is disconnected. His apartment is empty. The guy was a con artist. He stared at me, expecting what? A gasp, a triumphant smile, a vindictive, I told you so. I looked past him out the window of my 14th floor apartment at the city skyline. I could see the tiny ant-like cars moving slowly through the streets. A whole world of people with their own problems, their own dramas. Sarah's was just one more. I see, I said, my voice calm. Chris blinked. I see. That's it. Liam, she's ruined. He obliterated her. She lost her apartment, couldn't make rent. She's crashing on some friend's couch. Her parents are apparently livid. They'd warned her about him and she told them to butt out. She's a wreck. I pushed off from the counter and walked to my desk. I clicked my mouse and the 3 large monitors flickered to life, displaying the elegant, complex lines of my code. Well, I said, my gaze fixed on the screen, my fingers already resting on the keyboard. That sounds like a situation she'll have to manage. Chris was utterly still. I could feel his disbelief radiating across the room. This wasn't the reaction he'd prepared for. He'd expected catharsis. He'd expected us to crack open the beers and toast to the poetic justice of it all. But there was no poetry in it for me. Just the dull, predictable tragedy I'd seen coming from the moment she'd chosen the flashy convertible over the foundation. Karma wasn't a satisfying spectacle. It was just cause and effect. She had chosen a predator, and she had been preyed upon. It was that simple. I turned back to him and pointed at my primary monitor. Check out this new app interface I designed for the client onboarding process. We've reduced the steps from 12 to 4. The UX team is thrilled. Chris stared at me for a long moment, his mouth slightly agape. Then slowly, a strange, reluctant smile touched his lips. He wasn't smiling at Sarah's downfall. He was smiling at my transformation. He finally understood. The man who had walked away from the altar wasn't just hiding his pain. He had genuinely moved to a different emotional continent, and he wasn't accepting calls from the old world. He walked over, clapped a hand on my shoulder, and looked at the screen. "All right, you bastard," he said, his voice thick with a new kind of respect. "Show me how it works." The first message arrived like a note slipped under a door I'd already bricked up. It was a text from an unknown number, but the area code was hers. I was in the middle of a video stand-up with my team discussing the final bug fixes before our Q4 launch. My phone set to Do Not Disturb lit up with the preview, unknown number. "Liam, it's Sarah. I'm so sorry. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I think about you every day. Can we please talk?" I read the words. They registered as information devoid of emotional weight, a statement of fact from a parallel universe I no longer inhabited. My thumb moved deliberate and calm. Delete block. The second attempt came through a more convoluted route. My mother called, her voice hesitant. "Liam, honey, I just got off the phone with Patricia, Sarah's mother. She's distraught. She said Sarah is destroyed. That man, he ruined her. She said Sarah has no one, and she begged me to ask you to please just talk to her. Be the bigger person." I felt a flicker of annoyance, not at Sarah, but at the disruption to my peace. "Mom," I said, my voice even. "What happened to Sarah is a direct result of choices she made. Her consequences are not my responsibility to manage. Please don't pass on any more messages from them." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then a soft sigh of acceptance. "Okay, son, I understand." The third attempt was the mask finally slipping. "Another new number? This one didn't bother with sorrow. Unknown number. So you're just going to ignore me after everything we had? I'm suffering here. How can you be so cold and heartless? I know you see this. You owe me at least a conversation." The anger, the entitlement, the sheer audacity to claim I owed her anything. It was the real her, the one that had been hiding beneath the tears at the altar. The one who believed her pain, even self-inflicted, was a currency I was obligated to honor. I felt nothing but a mild disgust, the same way I'd feel seeing a bug scuttle across the floor. I deleted the message and blocked the number for the last time. 1 year later, the co-working space buzzed with the energy of a dozen startups, a symphony of clacking keyboards, brainstorming sessions, and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine. I was sitting at a reclaimed wood table, a panoramic view of the city's skyline stretching out behind me. I was Tanner, having finally taken a vacation, a solo hiking trip in the Rockies. My posture was easier, my laugh more ready. I was the lead developer and a minor equity partner in a company that was about to launch a product we all genuinely believed would change our little corner of the tech world. I was on a video call with my team. My wireless earbuds in Aya, our UX designer, was cracking a joke about our project manager's love of flowcharts. "I'm telling you, he dreams in nested loops and swim lanes," she said, and I laughed. A real easy laugh. That's when the email notification popped up in the corner of my screen. The personal account I use for login and very rarely for human contact, the sender's name made no immediate impression. Sarah Evans. It took my brain a full second to access the file to remember who that was. The subject line was a single word. Please. The preview text read, Liam, I have no one else to turn to. I lost everything. I miss you. I still love. My finger hovered over the trackpad. The team was still chatting in my ear. Maya now detailing a new user testing protocol. I watched my cursor, a slender arrow, hover over the subject line. I didn't feel curiosity. I didn't feel rage or pity or even a distant sense of shod and free. I felt nothing. It was an artifact, a piece of space junk from a disintegrated satellite drifting into my orbit. It had no power, no gravity, no meaning. I moved the cursor. I didn't click to open. I highlighted the entire email, the subject, and the tiny, tantalizing sliver of preview text turning blue. A single, decisive click. Delete. The email vanished from my inbox, not moved to trash, permanently deleted. It was gone as if it had never existed. I looked up from the screen, back at the faces of my team on the monitor. I smiled. All right, I said, my voice clear and focused, fully present in the vibrant, promising reality I had built for myself. Where were we? Let's talk about the Q4 launch. The camera on my laptop showed a man who was whole, successful, and completely at peace. The ghost had been banished, not by force, but by the simple, irrevocable act of building a life so full of light that the shadows of the past could no longer find a place to dwell. She was not a memory. She was nothing. And I was finally unequivocally free. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.